It's been 30 years since the UCF football team entered Division I. Here's a look back at those first 10 years for our Knights. Welcome into One More Night, a UCF podcast, one team, one heartbeat. This is Coach Wolf, and this is our first of our 30 in 3. So we're going to take the 30 years that we've been in Division One. We're going to break it up over 10-year increments over the next 3 episodes, starting today with 1996 all the way through 2005. So we're going to start off there. First of all, our coach at that time was Gene McDowell. He'd been our coach since 1985, so he had seen us go. We were one of the first teams to go from Division III, actually the first team to go from Division III, Division II to Double A, and then to 1A, or the Division One. So just a great, with such a young university only being around with football since 79. So we really did a quick growth as far as to get to Division One. So we're going to talk about those first 10. The one thing I want to remind everybody, so we don't get upset, is back then we were pretty much known as Central Florida. I mean, if you watched a game on TV, that's kind of what we went by. We also went by the mascot of Golden Knights. So we were the Central Florida Golden Knights, much different than what we do today. But I was a senior at UCF at this time. Dante Culpepper was our quarterback. He was here my junior year that I had transferred to UCF as a freshman. So this was his second year with UCF. So he's a sophomore, started his freshman year, also starting his sophomore year. And at the time, there were 11 independent teams. So we were one of 11 that had to basically go out and piecemeal our schedule, try to get on anybody that would take us. We could also get some of those other independents because, we're helping kind of each other out. But like we would play teams like William and Mary and Sanford, from the division, a lower division. And then we would play like some other Division I, Ball State, UAB, Bowling Green. We'd play some of those type of teams. But we did on this year have a game at South Carolina. And we lost that game. And we also, I went to 2 of the away games. One was in Fayetteville, and that was ECU, East Carolina. We ended up losing 28-7, but it was funny because we were there, and now how we get the first downs, and it's good enough for another UCF, and we go first down. Well, that's basically what ECU does. They'll say it's good enough for a first down, and they would yell Pirates. So we kind of play off of that. We do first down, but it was pretty cool to see that fan base do that kind of thing. So again, so those were a couple ones. The other game I went to was Georgia Tech up in Atlanta. That was a close game. We battled back and forth, but would lose that one 27-20. So, you know, not bad start. We were, not a winning record, 5-6, but we, for the first time had, playing some much uh, tougher competition. And so overall, seeing Dante, looked like he was going to continue to get better. And so we were looking forward to, that junior year. Well, I would graduate UCF and I'd actually move to Pensacola. So I actually didn't get to attend any games at the Citrus Bowl. So in 1997, you know, we did have some wins against lesser opponents, except for we had another Division I opponent, Northeast Louisiana. They beat us. We were on the road. We were battling back and forth, but they beat us 45-41. But we had 4 SEC teams that year, and we also had one other team, which I'll get to in just a moment. But we started out, at Ole Miss and go to overtime and we end up losing 24-23. So a nail biter on the road. And then we would go to South Carolina, same thing, a 33-31 defeat. But we're competing against these SEC teams, so we're kind of getting excited. But then we get on the road and we're going to the number 6 ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers. And do you want to know who was the QB for Nebraska that year? That's right. Our head coach now, Scott Frost, was a senior that year at Nebraska. We would actually, in that game, we jump out and we were actually leading at halftime 17-14. And then they would end up shutting us out, only allowing us to get one additional score for the rest of the time. And then Scott would bring them back with that option, and just basically, their talent kind of overran us there on the offensive side. They really dominated our defensive line, and some timely third downs, and ended up beating us 38-24. But there for a minute, when we go into halftime and we're up and we've had two close losses, we were doing really, really good. Now we would go on the road to Auburn that year. It was 21-14 at half, but they would, basically we got nothing offensively. Just Dante really struggled in the second half, and they would end up blowing us out 41-14. And then the other SEC team we played was Mississippi State, again on the road. We're playing all these teams on the road because, I mean, we're basically filling their schedules. And we give them a game too. We're 35-28, and we had the ball back twice, driving the ball down and threw two interceptions. So, basically we ended up 5-6 again. So we had two 5-6 campaigns, you know, but we're starting to get a reputation of being a scary team just because we were playing these teams so close. And typically, as you know, when we say like we're going to have Bethune-Cookman and Georgia State, we're expecting to blow those teams out. And that's what the expectation is. So, we're starting to get that reputation. So some people are going to probably be a little hesitant in scheduling us if we're doing that kind of thing. Now, during the season, there was what was called a cell phone scandal. And I guess one of the players had worked at some cell phone company and kind of got some illegal lines where they weren't really paying and kind of providing phones for other people. I guess it came up that McDowell actually knew about it, tried to actually help them cover it up because he knew the investigation was coming. So he was to step down. He just, I think he had like 2 years probation and some things, and the players had some things that they also were held accountable to. Nobody jail time, but there was a lot of probation and community service, and some people had to pay restitution and stuff. So there was some things about that, but kind of ended Gene's on a real bad note. Here's somebody that kind of seen us through to Division I, had been playing some close games over the last couple of years, especially in '97, and we would see him leave. Now, we're kind of a new university in this. They basically hired from within. Mike Kruzik, who had been a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he actually took over. And what I'll do is I'll come back. I just got to, get to my information here, but I'm going to flip to that and kind of tell you a little bit about Mike and then talk about his time through the seasons at UCF. So Kruzik actually went to Boston College, was a quarterback, was drafted in the second round, 47th pick to Pittsburgh. And he did get some playing time there, but really struggled. 0 TDs, 8 interceptions. Went ahead and kind of went in the coaching route, and for many years, kind of just bounced around from position to position, team to team, until he ran in with Gene, and Gene McDowell made him the quarterbacks coach and also the offensive coordinator. So from 85 all the way up to 97, Mike was with UCF. So he had seen the growth and everything, had already worked with Dante through his first couple of years. So, that was very, very beneficial as well. Now, when and we're going to get to where when he leaves UCF. But after he left UCF, he goes around, starts bouncing around in the NFL again. But he actually comes back home here to Central Florida and ends up getting a job at Trinity Prep, which is right down the road in Winter Park. And he would end up, coaching there. Let's see, he was there from 2013 to 2022. So a long, long stint at Trinity Prep working with young men. I think he's one of those that just really loves the game. And so, his son actually is now the head coach at Lake Mary. And so he bowed out of Trinity Prep and now is kind of just helping his son. I think he kind of is more on that, want to kind of have a retired little flexibility, instead of being the head guy, but still wants to be around it. So, but I'll tell you a quick story about Mike before I get to the 1998 season. So, my freshman year, I was here at UCF. It was Dante, my freshman year. My junior year, when I transferred in, was Dante Culpepper's freshman year here at UCF. Now, I had a bunch of players in my class in high school. Bernard Wilson, who went to Florida State, Yatil Green, who went to Miami. I had Antonio Bradwell, who went to Louisville. So we had some very talented Division I football players on my graduating class. So UCF was one of the schools that was up there trying to recruit these guys, of course. Now they went to some of the bigger schools at that time, but the recruiter that was for our area was the offensive line coach. His name is Paul Lounsbury. Now, Paul knew my dad. And so when I went to UCF, dad says, go to the athletic office, tell them who you are, and tell them to see if you can meet Paul, introduce yourself. So I go to the athletic office. I ask for Paul Lounsbury, tell him it's Chris Wolf. My dad, Skip Wolf, was the head coach at Columbia that he did some recruiting for. And so Paul goes over there and he just kind of showing me around the athletic office. Now it was really small back then. It was just like a little X building over, past like the library and stuff out there where the athletic fields for like recreation were. So it was a very small little area. And he was walking me around and he actually walks into the quarterback room and Dante's in there. And so he takes a moment, introduces me to Dante, told him about my dad being a coach at Columbia and Dante played in Ocala. So, I knew his school and he knew of Columbia. And so we were just chatting a little bit. Well, Mike steps out for a minute. Paul steps out for a minute and Mike Kruzik comes in. And of course, he doesn't know me from a can of paint. He he's yelling at me about what am I doing in this office? And luckily Dante was like, Coach, it's all right. Coach Lounsbury brought him in. And so, that was my introduction to him. So, not very good first impression with how he kind of jumped on me. But, I was just like, man, just, relax. I was like, it was kind of interesting. But, Paul and I have stayed in touch. And it's also funny as I tell you about how, like right now I'm in, uh, in UCF, but when I leave and go to Pensacola, where I'm at, I eventually get back to the Orlando area. And at one stint, I actually work with Mike's son in an endeavor, which I'll kind of talk about when I get to that year. But I mean, it's just funny how you meet people. And he's actually helped with my stepson doing, some offensive line footwork drills and stuff when he was helping at Winter Park. So these coaches stay in it. I mean, Paul still goes out to UCF. I'm hoping to maybe see if I can get him on too, because just a plethora of knowledge, just a great guy. So, all right, let's get back to the 1998 season. So Culpepper's a senior. We start with two routes of some smaller teams, and then we go on the road to Purdue. Now, Purdue has a quarterback that some of you may know, Drew Brees. So, you know, Super Bowl winning quarterback, played for the Saints. But they just absolutely trounce us at their place, 35-7. So we're just sitting there. I'm like, man, that was kind of our chance to kind of see if we kind of belonged, and we really didn't look real good. Well, then we can get on a winning streak. We actually are 7-1, and now we're going to go on the road to Auburn. Well, Auburn, of course, with me being from Alabama, my family is basically split between Alabama and Auburn. So growing up, I was actually an Auburn Tiger fan. So we actually had a lake cabin up on the river of the Chattahoochee River, about 30 minutes from Jordan Hare Stadium. So I decide I want to go to this game. And so I go up there and, we'd gotten blown out the year before, but I just really wanted to, I'd never been to an Auburn game, and you go up there and you got the paw prints leading you to the stadium and all the tiger tails hanging out of there. And I mean, it's a big crowd. I mean, it's 70 strong in that stadium, and we end up getting two field goals in the first half and shut them out. We're up 6-0 at half. So they end up getting a field goal in the third quarter, and we're up three, but we're actually driving. We're taking the ball down. We're on their 20-yard line with a minute 51. Gosh, if we can punch it in, we've sealed the deal going up 10. But even a field goal keeps us, maybe a little momentum. So we're on the 20, and we fumble the snap and end up losing it. And they get the ball on the 29-yard line. There's a minute 43, but they still got to go the whole field, or at least, down to probably like the 30 to get a decent shot at a field goal to tie. They throw three incomplete passes, so it's 4th and 10. If we get them off the field, we run the clock out, we win. And they get a 13-yard first down with a minute 22. The next play, it's a short out, and we're in man to man for some reason. I'm not real sure the defensive call why we didn't have some blanketed coverage over the top. We were ISO'd out there, and quarterback makes a great pass to the outside shoulder, and then he makes one move to the inside, like a little swim move, and our cornerback misses, and there's no help over the top. All the angles not there. He takes it to the house. He takes it 58 yards for the touchdown. They go up 10-6. There's like 50 something seconds, and then we end up not converting. So close to really getting there. And I really think that was the game, because we were rumored to be looking at the Awohabo Bowl, but got it rescinded. And I think it was due to that loss, because we end up winning the next two games and going 9-2 on the year. And Culpepper was invited to the Heisman voting. He was sixth in the voting. He also was the 11th pick to the Minnesota Vikings that year in the NFL draft. So that was kind of a good chance for us to really kind of put a stamp on it, but unfortunately, it just did not work in our favor. So, and again, at this time, I was still in Pensacola. I'd been there for the 97-98 seasons, but my 2-year basically work certification that I had run out. I could not get it renewed without a master's degree. So I was kind of in a pickle what to do. And so I decided to come back to Central Florida. I wanted to get back to Orlando. A couple of buddies of mine, we were going to move in together. I didn't really know what I was going to do. My sister had lined me up for a YMCA camp job. So I just, came, got that, and started working there, and ended up staying on for after school, and then ended up finding a job with UPS, because I needed benefits, and UPS had the midnight shift where they offered benefits for part-time work. So I ended up doing that. So I was working UCF and doing the Y, but in 98, I would decide to get season tickets. So me and my two roommates, we got season tickets. We started with 4 ranked opponents. And of course, a lot of that was, due to the fact, again, we're still independent and we're just trying to get games. So we started out, we were at home this time, but we started out with number 22 Purdue. We had a huge crowd for us, 40,000 in the Citrus Bowl. Most of the time we were in the teens, like anywhere from like 13 to 17,000. And occasionally we'd get a bigger game and get in those like mid 20s, but nothing like this with 40,000. So, but they would romp us 47-13. Then we go to Florida, and Florida 58-27, and they allowed like gaps in there. I mean, we had Vic Penn, who was our quarterback at this point because Dante was gone, and they pretty much, I think, had the cheerleaders on defense there at the end, and we were able to move the ball. Then we would go on the road again to Georgia Tech, and I'd gone the year before, and so I wanted to go again, so I went, but this time it was a blowout. It's 41-10. And it was funny because this time I sat down low. At Georgia Tech, the stands are actually stacked on top of each other on the visitor side. So you have like the bottom stands, and then because 85-75 mergers kind of right there in downtown, they really don't have a lot of room. So they just went up and stacked it on. So there's columns. And I happen to have like this terrible seat where, the column would be in my way for a lot of the plays, although I didn't miss much because, like I said, it was pretty much a blowout. And then, we're sitting there and I'm like, God, we're just doing so like up and down each year. Can we do something? Oh, great. We got to go on the road to number 11, Georgia. Well, that'll be a good game. And it actually turned out to be one. We end up losing this game, but it was tagged as burglary between the hedges. We basically got robbed. So we're down 23-24. That would be the final score, but we're down that and we are driving. We are on the 20-yard line, and Vic throws a pass to Kenny Clark. Looks like he's, going to pull it into the end zone, ends up, getting out of the end zone, but there's a flag. And, of course, I'm like, sweet, we're going to get half the distance to the goal on a first down. But we're going to be able to run the clock out, kick a field goal, and beat Georgia between the hedges, ranked number 11. But wait, there was a little huddle between the officials, and, you can't let Georgia win. I mean, lose to this UCF Knights team. Let's turn it into offensive pass interference. And people will tell you, even Georgia fans have come up to me and said, yeah, uh, y'all got hosed. It was a way to keep that. I mean, but money talks, and you hate to see it, but I mean, if you go back and see it, I mean, there's and people say you can't argue judgment calls. I'm an official. I agree with you. Uh, it was an absolutely atrocious call. Not only that, the pass interference was 15 yards, so now we're on the 35. So now we're not even in field goal range. We got to try to come back in field goal range, where we couldn't do it, and then we would end up not getting the score and lose that game between the hedges. And that it just really soured us. We did have 4 games at home that we were 3-1 that year. We lost to Louisiana Tech. We'd go on the road to Auburn again and again. I would go and we would lose 28-10. We ended up 4-7. Just a very down year after coming off such a great year in '98. But it's just one of those things where we had some tough opponents on there. We almost got one good one there. We kind of let the La Tech one, but we really do. And Auburn really wasn't that strong that year, that they beat us 28-10. But it's just one of those things. So the biggest thing is you just gotta push on and get to the next one. Well, in 2000, we're sitting there, and I'm like, okay, we got season tickets again. We're at Georgia Tech again. We had three years in a row we're at Auburn. We had 3 years in a row we're at Georgia Tech. And I'm like, do I go after last year's blowout? And one, I knew which tickets I didn't want. So I did go. I ended up getting on the upper deck, so that way I wouldn't be blocked. And it was a beautiful day in Atlanta that day. And unfortunately, 27 or 21-17, close game, but you know, couldn't get it. And then we win 5 out of the next 7, but there was no really big teams. And so we're sitting there and I'm like, oh, I'm hoping that we can, get some push and, give somebody a game. Well, lo and behold, we got to go to Alabama. And my sister goes, she was actually at UCF at that time. She goes, I'm going to go to the game. And I'm like, I'm not going to the game. I'm like, every time I go, we lose. I don't want to go. Auburn was 3-4. They were terrible, but I'm like, it's their homecoming. They're going to have a packed one. I'm not going. So my buddy Matt, who's from Jacksonville, and a girl I just started dating, her sister was at UNF. So we drive up for the weekend. She visits her sister. I'm going to visit Matt, and we're going to watch the game there. And we end up watching the game, and it was titled as The Drive, or better known as The Kick. And here we are. We are 38-37 down to Alabama, but we're driving down and we get within field goal range. And with 3 seconds, 37 yards, nobody will forget this name, Borlegi. So he comes out and he gives us a kick there and ends up winning the game. Matt and I jump in the pool was probably in the 60s because it was pretty chilly up there in October in Jacksonville. But it was just a great victory. Of course, my sister was rubbing it in because she was there to see it. But Javier Borlegi makes the kick. Ryan does a good job. Snyder is our quarterback at this time, not Vic, and he's doing a great job of leading the team down, getting that kick, and then we would turn around and host number 8 Virginia Tech to finish off the season with Michael Vick. May have heard of him. 44-21 lost to end the season. We had finished it 7-4. Rumored that we'd get the Las Vegas Bowl, and again we were turned down for the bowl. So we end the 2000 season with no bowl again, and now we're flipping the script. We're going to go to the 2001 through 2005, that back part of this first decade. So now moving into 2001, Ryan's still going to be our quarterback, and we start off with our road starts, 4 of them in a row. So again, we're not home until October, and so we're at Clemson, lose a close one, 21-13. We go on the road to Syracuse, you lose 21-10. We go on the road to Virginia Tech and lose 46-14. They were ranked number 8 at that time. And so that was just a tough way to start. We would get 6 out of the next 8 we would win. And we actually had a heartbreak later in the season at Arkansas, losing 27-20. It was a chance we just keep having all these chances. We did knock off Alabama the year before, but we kept having more chances to do some of these Division I, SEC, and other teams that we were playing, and just could not get it to go. But it's our 3rd winning season in 4 years. Again, we're no bowl, even though we had 6 wins. We're not doing enough to get that, and the blowouts to the other teams were really hurting our status. But we had some exciting news, and the exciting news is that we were going to end up joining the Mid-American Conference, the MAC. Now, the MAC has basically all the northern teams, but it was at least giving us a chance to get into a division that has conference championships and a little bit more bowl ties. So maybe we could do that. We were going to be on the East Division, and one of the teams that would end up kind of being a rival for us was Marshall. We would play Marshall in that East Division, and it was kind of like one of those that we were always in a battle with, kind of like some of the ones we've had in Conference USA and some of the other ones that we've had in our existence. So, but Marshall was ranked number 24 that year, so we knew they would be good. And so we had 12 games now because we had 8 conference games, and then we had 4 non-conference. Our non-conference was 24. Penn State went on the road. Great battle up there again. 27-24, just can't seem to get over the hump. But then we turn around and go to Arizona State and get thumped 46-13. So 2 weeks travel, Arizona State all the way to the west. I just think that really hurt us. And then we got to go to Marshall. Battled of a game because, like I said, there was a little bit of they were kind of up and coming. We were kind of up and coming. They were ranked. They were where we were wanting to get to, and we battled them hard, but lost by 5, 26-21. We'd win against Liberty, and then Syracuse. We'd have them at home, and this is another year again where we kept having a team, but this time they came to our home, kind of like Purdue, but they beat us 38-35. It was a close game again, but we just too many close games is what was killing us. And then we would have a conference loss to Toledo, who was the leader of the West Side. So basically the loss to Marshall, the loss to Toledo ended up making a 6-2 in conference behind Marshall. And so 7-5 for the year. Again, no bowl because we just didn't. If we could have made one of those other wins that were so close, it would help our resume. But Marshall actually played Toledo for East versus West for the conference championship, and Marshall would win. And like I said, they were kind of where we wanted to be, and so that was very heartbreaking. And then we go into 2003. And this was probably the saddest year we'd had. We start out at Virginia Tech, who's ranked number 9, 49-28. They beat us. We come back home. We play FAU. We beat them. Then we back at the road to Syracuse again, and they do it to us again on the road, 38-14. And then at West Virginia, and they would beat us 36-18. So again, just a horrific start. Um, yes, some tougher competition, but you know, just we got to definitely do something in the conference. And we won against Buffalo and we won against Central Michigan, but we just could not win the other games. Just these teams were, I won't say that they were worse than us, but we were on the same level. And if wanting to be taken seriously, we needed to be moving forward, and we were moving backwards. To make matters worse, November 4th, Ryan gets suspended for breaking team rules. Don't know what's going on there. Senior season, now he's out. So we're backup quarterback. November 8th, we go on the road to Eastern Michigan and we lose. So we're now sitting at 3-7, and they go ahead and fire Mike Kruzik and elevate Alan Gooch, who was on the staff as basically an assistant coach. His wife is Linda Gooch, who has been the cheer coach for when I was there and beyond. I mean, she's still there. Can't believe, and just very successful. So I don't even know what Alan's doing now, but she's been very successful. But Alan would step in the last two games. We'd go on the road, battle Marshall for a little while, but then they would stretch it out and win 21-7, and then we come back and host number 15 Miami, but not the Hurricanes, Miami of Ohio. Yes, Miami of Ohio Redhawks. We host them, but they have a quarterback by the name of Ben Roethlisberger. May have heard of that Super Bowl winning quarterback too. He lit us up. First of all, their offensive linemen looked like they averaged 500 pounds apiece. I mean, they walked out, and I was just like, we looked like a Pop Warner, not even a high school team playing college team. They manhandled us up front. It was 41-0 at half. They actually pulled Ben the second half. He didn't even play. I mean, he had like over 500 yards and like four touchdowns. It was nuts. And so they would beat us 56-21. In the year, 3-9, 2-6. We're just sitting there going, man, this was horrible. Who were they going to get? Well, we also got some news that we were going to go ahead and be making another move to a different conference after the 2020 or 2004 season. So we're going to be moving to Conference USA. We still had one more season with the MAC. But there was also some expansion that was happening with Conference USA, which I think is why, it kind of made it exciting. Marshall was coming over with us, so they were going to leave. And it was more regional. They had a lot more, like I said, all these teams were three up in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Ball State. And all. I mean, just so many northern teams. This was going to give us some like Rice, SMU, UTEP from Texas. You had Tulsa, some of the ones you already had in there. You had UAB, you had ECU, who was independent but had joined in 2001. Houston was a member. Memphis, you had Southern Miss, you had Tulane. So you just had a lot more Southern teams. Now USF was in it. But they were actually leaving because they were getting another opportunity. So they were shifting out, and so was Cincinnati, TCU, and Louisville. That's why I was kind of opening up. And so this is starting, conference realignment starting to happen. The MAC has pretty much kind of maintained the same, grouping since then. But we're going to be moving to Conference USA, but we got to find a coach. So Dante Culpepper, reaches out to UCF and says, hey, there's a guy up here right now that I think would be perfect for the job. And what had happened is Georgia Tech, who we had played many times, was coached by George O'Leary. And George was the one putting those whooping on us up there in Atlanta. Well, George had decided that he wanted to, strike while the iron was hot. Georgia Tech was ranked, getting some good push in the ACC. So he decided to throw his hat into the ring when the Notre Dame job opened up. And he actually interviewed for the job and got the job. And I believe it was 2002. I believe it was either 2001 or 2002. But then come to find out, he ends up not being truthful on his resume He had kind of fabricated some stuff there. That's, you're supposed to be, a document that you're signing saying that everything on there is factual. That's just not to Notre Dame standards. So they immediately rescind the offer, hire another coach, and then end up, George is without a job now. So George actually ended up, because he knew somebody in Minnesota up there with Dante. He was working with the defense, like the defensive line and defensive, things there. And, you know, he was just like, look, I've spent some time around George. I think you'd be good to interview him. So we did, and we offer him the job. And so we're moving there, and there's a lot of blowback too. Like, how could you hire me? Lied, But it's like, does he not get another choice? And the thing is like we needed to have somebody with some pedigree. At least George had some pedigree. Now he's old school, no names on the back of the jerseys, no nonsense, really gruff, really, rugged, coach. But hopefully he could get some things out of it. So let's talk about how his first 2 years went, one in the MAC and one in Conference USA, and that'll wrap up this first part of the first 10 of the 30. So the quarterback for the Knights was going to be Kyle Israel in 2004. Now, in 2004, at this point, I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, some of the things that had happened to me in 2001, I got married. I also had my first child. In 2003, I had my second child. So I have two young children at this point. And 2004 would be like the worst fall ever. And it started even before the season began, because it was just hurricane season for us. We had one that hit the Panhandle, and then on Friday the 13th in August, I was actually getting set up for my leagues for the YMCA where I was working as a sports director at this point. I was no longer with UPS, and we were out actually painting fields, and we start getting all these text messages from my wife at that time that was saying, "Are you hunkered down? Are you getting the house ready?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because the original forecast had this thing going into the Gulf and going back more towards the Panhandle again, so I wasn't worried about it. Well, it had taken a sharp turn that Friday morning, and the 8 o'clock advisory had it going straight across Central Florida. And I was like, well, gosh, and it had strengthened from like a 2 to a 4 in just like 6 hours. So I was like, man, okay. So we were out there painting, me and my coordinator David, and I was like, well, let's go get a bite to eat. So we go up to Smoky Bones, and we get up there, and they're like, all right, we're closing at 2. Okay. And so we get our food and we eat, and then we head back to the Y. The Y's like, we're closing at 3. Like, oh my God. I'm like, so we finally get to a TV, because again, we didn't have cell phones back. We did have cell phones, but not ones that you could, smartphones where you could look up weather and everything. And we start looking, I'm like, oh my God, David, I got to get home and get some things hunkered down. So I run home and try to get hunkered down, and Charlie comes through and just wallops us, and then, delays my start of the season. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just crazy. Well, then football season's getting ready to start. We're on the road at Wisconsin and on the road at West Virginia. Both are actually, no, we're at home with West Virginia. Both of them are ranked. Wisconsin's 21, West Virginia's number 10. We would lose both of those. The West Virginia game, we had about 32,000 there in the Citrus Bowl, which was pretty good. But then we would go on the road to Penn State, and we'd been there before. But at this time, guess what's out in the Atlantic? Another hurricane. So not this time from the Gulf side. This time we're coming from the Atlantic side, and it was Hurricane Francis, and it was coming through. This was actually, right after Labor Day weekend, and then they were coming there, and then this hurricane, comes through, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. And then to not even have everything cleaned up and picked up. I had all that yard debris out. I was like bored in my house. We ended up staying at my sister's. And then, not probably a week and maybe a half after that, maybe 2, Gene comes through, same track as Francis. Both of these weren't very severe as far as wind. They were, category 1 for the most part, some, kind of tick of two, but they were large and they were just, they just sat for hours and hours and hours, like 24, 48 hours in one spot. And just that much with the water, it was more water than anything. The wind's bad, but the water was just, with the tides and everything, so a lot of damage. And so we're just doing cleanup and fixing things, and I'm doing things at the house. And while all this is going on, I'm just, the nights are just, close. They almost get a win at home versus Akron, lose 26-21. And then the Ohio game, actually at that game, we go to overtime, and they score first, and then we score, and then we miss the extra point by, a great kicker in the NFL, Matt Prater, but he misses the extra point to send us to a second overtime. So we lose that one. And then the next closest game we had was at Ball State. We lose 21-17. So we actually go winless. So we go through three hurricanes and go winless. We're 0-11, 15-game losing streak. I mean, this is just absolutely horrible way to start off George O'Leary's tenure here. We are moving to a new conference, but there wasn't a lot of excitement about it. I was just, I had to re-roof my own house because it was, the insurance. Of course, all the businesses, they hike everything up after a disaster like that because they know insurance is paying. Well, I was trying to get other things fixed as well. So I actually did some things myself, and the roof was one of them I did. So I re-roofed my own home. I had to get, things done as far as like the ceiling treated. That was all things. So I had to box everything up in a pod, get that fixed. All my fence had torn up. So I had to buy a new fence and get all that put around, and just a lot of cleanup, a lot of repair. I was hurricaned out. Season was pretty bad. And I just finally decided I'd had enough of Florida. I love UCF, but it was time to move. I ended up taking a job offer in February in Charlotte and would move up there. And so the 2005 season, our first year at Conference USA, I would be up there in Charlotte watching it. And the biggest thing is that, again, we're starting off on the road again. So it's so much different now where we have like 3 home games in September. We were always on the road, it seemed like, in the early ones, and then would come back home. But, our new quarterback this year was going to be Sean Moffitt. He proved to be a much, much more reliable quarterback. We go to South Carolina, lose a close game, 24-15. Go to South Florida. It was our first time playing them. There was a talk about this is going to be a rival. This is going to be a rival. But again, they were changing conferences. They were like, you're the little kid on the block, because they had, kind of been already in a conference, and they beat us 31-14. The war on I-4 thing hadn't really started yet, but there was definitely, the fan bases did not like each other, and it was a pretty good showing of in the at the Buccaneer Stadium. They had a lot of both sides of fans, so it was a lot of juice for a first one. But really, our rival had kind of been Marshall, and they had moved over there with us. But again, you know, we finally get a win against them. So we had lost all 3 years with Marshall, and Marshall, we finally get them and beat them 23-13. So that was kind of nice. So even though we'd lost to South Florida, we beat Marshall. And then we had non-con games against Louisville and Louisiana Lafayette, 24-21. And then we would win 6 out of the next 7, all close games, though. I mean, every game we played was nail biters. We did have the loss to Southern Miss, which gave us one loss in our conference. And so with one loss on the east side, but we beat Marshall, we actually were the East representative, and we would host it based off of like tiebreakers and things like that, and against the West Side winner, which was Tulsa. And so here I am in Charlotte watching in the Citrus Bowl, 51,978 fans, great atmosphere. Here we are, first year in the Conference USA, and we're in the championship, but we would lose 44-27, really struggled. Tulsa was definitely just a better team, but we would finally get that much needed bowl invite that we had so hoped for. And that was Hawaii Bowl. So not many fans going to make that trip, even though it was the first one. I do think some did. And, it was 28-20 at half. We kind of came out really hot in that first half, but Nevada would come back and battle back and actually end up tying the score. It was 42-42 at the end of regulation. Now, this is played on Christmas Eve. So most of the time I watch this game while I'm wrapping gifts for my kids, but we were actually down at my in-laws in Fort Lauderdale, Sunrise area. And, I was like, well, we got basically all the gifts done. I want to go watch the game. So we found a bar that was actually open and we went there and we were watching the game. And of course, I'm having some drinks and everything. And of course, it's stressful because it's back and forth, back and forth. So they get the ball first because we win the toss, we defer. When they get the ball first, they score. So now it's 49-42. And I'm like, oh, it's got to come back. Well, it didn't take us long. Kevin Smith punches it in, gets the score. And I'm like, all right, we're going to a second overtime, but I got to use the bathroom. So I sprint to the bathroom to go use the bathroom so that I can come back and be ready because we're going to get the ball first in the second overtime. And I come back, and my father-in-law and wife at the time was packing up, and they're like, yeah, they lost. I'm like, what do you mean they lost? It was like he missed the extra point. And guess who it was again? Matt Prater. Like I said, I mean, he's such a good NFL kicker, but he had lost this Ohio because he missed a PAT the year before, and then our first bowl game. That's how we lose, is a missed PAT by Matt Prater. So, so lots of ups and downs through this first 10 years. I mean, one, we're glad to finally be Division I, and then to be able to get into a conference, and then now really Conference USA felt like it was going to be a better conference in the first year, get to the championship game. And even though we lost, we made a bowl game, we've got some things moving in the positive direction. So when we come back on the next episode of the 30-3, be the second decade of our existence as Division I, and we'll talk about years 2006 all the way to 2015. So that's what'll be up next. I know there's some other things in the sports world that's been going on, but I'm going to do these 3 episodes. I'll come back because, as you can see, they're very long, just going over all the information. So I'll come back and get us back up to date on some topics that are going around. I'm writing them down, and I'll get to those. But next episode, second decade of the 30-3. And let's not keep any more of your time. Thank you guys for tagging along for these first 10 years, and I'll see you soon. And as always, go Knights, charge on.